As long as Meg wants to do it,
We'll
but then
do
we'll
that
start the,
until Meg is done.
Yeah.
And then we will, if we
Start the
have
meeting by
time,
7:30.
we'll start the meeting by 7:30. So, okay. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
for coming to train us.
Yeah, and I think it might be an hour, but it depends on how many questions. So, this is very informal, so, I'm gonna just
We
kind
have
of be walking around, and no offense for my back, but, I have some handouts, and instead of doing a big PowerPoint and all that, I really wanted to kind of just chat with you about the concepts, get your feedback. Ken asked me to talk tonight specifically about one land use topic, which is conditional use permits. Are, from the public, are you just interested citizens or,
I'm always here.
okay.
She
But I'm
works
just
here.
staff, I just.
Oh, staff,
yeah,
okay,
I'm
great.
just sitting here for a
Okay.
minute.
and Libby is
I'm-
quasi-staff. She's our neighborhood committee chair.
Oh, excellent, okay, great, okay,
And then
So-
I think the other two in the back are.
okay. So please feel free, this is a training for them, but if there are questions, I'll let the chair, entertain how you want to handle that, flex. So, who is the newest member on the committee? Okay, so, for a great prize at the end, I am gonna put you on the spot, only because I think it just starts the discussion point. And I want you to tell me what you think a conditional use permit means. When you see an application come before you, what does that mean to you?
Go back.
We're gonna cheer you on, go back.
Way I kind of understand it is that it's a permit to allow some type of variance that will still fit within a certain zone that otherwise is not allowed to the ordinance.
Okay, start. Anyone else else would like to take? And there's no wrong answers, there's things we can chat about. So who else wants to give me an idea of what they may think? Or I'll just point to, you've got a mouthful. Okay, how about you start?
So it's something that's allowed by the code, but it exceeds the normal limits of the zone in some way. So it's taller or a different use or larger in footprint.
Okay. Anybody else want to give their 2 cents worth? Okay, well, those are great starting points, and there's truth in both of those. So let's just start with actually what a conditional use permit is, because there's, I think, a lot of misconception. And where we're going to start is right with the state statute, because the state statute, which is the Land Use Development and Management Act, which I know you all look at every day, especially before you come to the planning commission. But that is where we find the source of our authority for all land use in the state. Then that source of authority gives you the ability to develop your own code, but really that's the overarching, you can, you can't. It gives you the direction. And so in this little handout we have what you need to know about conditional uses. And this is just from a PowerPoint that I do, but I thought I'd just print it all out for you just so you have it. But let's talk about the types of uses in a zoning district. So we have a permitted use. So what does that mean, a permitted use in a zone? So that means in a single family zone, we would assume that you would allow single family houses. And you would have standards for that single family house. You would say, whatever we've decided, because the state still gives you that flexibility here. You don't have to be like any other city. You could have 30 feet, you could have 100 feet tall, you could have 10 feet tall. Whatever by the process you determine you would have in that zone. So that means that I, as an applicant, pull up the Pleasant Grove code, and I see, I look at the map, I'm in the single family zone. Oh, and here, I need 28 feet, I need a setback of 10, a setback of 5, I need pink shutters on the back of my house, whatever it may be. And that if I meet all of those, I get a permit. It's administrative in a sense. It's check, check, check. Give them the check, and then you get your permit. So that's a permitted use. And so you can have a variety of permitted uses in your community, depending on, again, the collective consensus and then approval by your legislative body. Because even though you guys do all the hard work and figure out all the great ideas and plans, ultimately the legislative body, the council, are the ones that make the final decisions on zoning ordinances. They legislate. They're the ones, so we, give them all the creative ideas and hopefully they listen. But, so that's a permitted use, and we're just welcome, you guys, I'm Meg from the league, it's very informal.
Thank you, sorry we're
We're-
late.
That's okay, we're just starting with the definition. So I put some of your fellow commissioners on the spot to ask, what do you think a conditional use really is and what does it mean? And so we're kind of taking a step back and trying to talk about where that definition comes from, which is the state code and what it actually means. So permitted is allowed to set standards. So conditional is a permitted use in a zone, okay, that you can attach conditions to if you have some criteria. So, but that's the key, it's a permitted. So it's not something we don't think will fit, it's not something that never will fit, it's really permitted. We're just gonna take an extra look to make sure it fits, and we can put some extra conditions on there. And then prohibited, of course, is that it's not allowed. And then there's just some pictures of John prohibited. My favorite one, you can't maybe see this so well here on prohibited, but this is in one community where next to the city cemetery, they put a Bed Bath and Beyond. So I thought that was pretty good placement. They must have had some neighborhood compatibility or something there as a standard. So what is this? What is this definition? Okay, so here's a mouthful, but this is actually it. This is Title 10, Chapter 9A, Section 507. And I have one extra copy. If any of you care, I apologize. I should have thought of that earlier. But there's one for you guys to share. Okay, so the state says that a conditional use means a land use that, because of its unique characteristics or potential impact on the municipality, surrounding neighbors, or adjacent land uses, may not be compatible in some areas or may be compatible only if certain conditions are required that mitigate or eliminate the detrimental impacts. Okay, and then it goes on to state that you don't have to have conditional uses. It's a choice, it's an elective, if you want to do that. Some communities don't have any. Some have just all conditional uses. So it's your choice what makes sense for your community. But if you do have conditional uses, you need to have it written in your code with standards of review, which we'll talk about. And we'll look at your code and just talk about that a little bit and see where we're at. But then I'm gonna skip down to this thing, which I think there's been a lot of misunderstanding in the past that the conditional use permit can really be denied. It is very, very, very hard to deny a conditional use because, again, if we look at that language, it's something that's permitted in that area, and it may or may not fit, but that may not fit is very hard to say no to, because we're going to say that the conditions we place on that will make it fit, if that makes sense. So,
I think we've only ever really denied one, and it's after they already violated the heck out of what was, they were applying for new one.
so it was like non-compliance with conditions. So that's more of a code enforcement.
Other than the
But I think there
Verizon
was-
Wireless one up at Manila Elementary,
Oh, yeah.
that one was
That
denied.
wasn't here.
And then it was overturned
By the Board of Adjustment.
Okay, and what was their rationale, that you didn't have enough, there could be things to mitigate that use?
Yeah.
Okay, so, and yeah, of course, you know the process, again, there's we always have levels in government, but if you make a decision that it goes to somebody else, that's due process, they have the right, and then ultimately you go to the courts. That's why it's important, or in everything we do, and I know you guys do it, I'm just reiterating that, following your code, and when you make a motion and a finding on something, that you're following that code and you're articulating that again. You can be as informal as you want in discussion and debate, but when somebody makes that final motion, it needs to be, I make the motion to approve the conditional permit based on section blah, blah, blah of our code, based on these reasons and attached to this property. So I'm gonna skip down while we're still on definitions to its, and I didn't have these labeled, but it's maybe 4 or 5 pages after the definition one, and it's from the Utah State Code. And it says a conditional use shall be approved if reasonable conditions are proposed or can be imposed to mitigate the reasonably anticipated detrimental effects, blah, blah, blah. Very big language. Basically, that's the concept, that we can put a condition on there, we'll talk specifically about this, that mitigates any effect that we think might happen from that use. Okay? So you can deny it, but the threshold and the bar is very high. And I guess as your examples you've seen, where when you did deny it, you didn't meet that threshold. So,
Sorry, can I say something?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
There's obviously a huge difference between shall and may. So shall is a must, right? I mean, there's.
that's right, and
it's
that's,
under statutes, if it's shall, it's.
right, because basically it's a permitted use in a zone, but has some, you can place conditions on it. So, and that's, I think, you're exactly right. And people kind of look to a B more than they look to A usually and say, oh, we can deny it, we can deny it. Which gets back to the source of the issue about in your zoning districts, you guys have the great privilege of deciding and recommending to the legislative body what uses are appropriate in each zone. So let's take, for example, your neighborhood commercial zone. And I just pulled one randomly. I think it's neighborhood commercial. Is that what it's called? Neighborhood something? And you have a list of permitted uses. And then you have a list of conditional uses. And so under this zone, you have a gas service station, a fast food restaurant, car wash, legal services, research, data processing, miniature golf, professional services. So it's very important that, and I don't know, maybe you've recently done this, but that you in each zone look at those and say, does that make sense? Are we still something that shall pretty much be approved in that zone? We can look at it and tweak it maybe with some conditions. And we'll talk, again, I know I keep saying conditions, and you're probably like, what are you talking about? But so do those make sense? And it's really something good to look at every once in a while and go through your zoning map and make sure those uses make sense. You don't want things in there that don't make any sense, and there's no way that it should be in that zone as a conditional use. There should be very few, in my opinion. And if you know that you want a use in a zone, and you can put what those standards are, so like we talked about the single family zone, home, and we know we want setbacks and height or whatever. If you can figure out that detail, just put it in as a permitted use with those standards. You know, if we made the decision to say to the community, these are the uses that we want, then I think we have a responsibility to say then, hi, welcome to our community, this is how you get your permit. Yes, we are, as municipalities have the longer term view and need to balance development. But for me, that's kind of for larger scale projects, or really when you're at the larger commercial stage. These really should be few and should make total sense. And again, if you figure out that you know what you want, for example, like if you know for a miniature golf that you need to have lighting or access or a certain amount of parking, just put those standards in there, be clear, and make it a permitted use with those standards. So that's a perfect world. That's when we all have time to look at all this stuff and figure this out. But that's just a suggestion to you. So let's get back again to what I keep talking about, all this like conditions and what does this mean? And you know, that these really are things that we should approve. We talked about you have to have it written in. So let's talk about these review criteria and actually take a project. And the second document I gave you is from our training handbook. And it's an example of standards, where you, standards and review, I use standards and review criteria interchangeably, and we'll look at your exact ordinance, but we're gonna walk through this now, if that's okay, and then talk about, maybe how you work through the process of a conditional use.
One of those.
Do you,
I think we must have switched it one way or another.
in this, the little handout is a, let's see, I have one left for you. This is a checklist that we put together and as well as a sample. And the sample example of the ordinance I have in here is from Fillmore. We just went through and kind of did theirs, but it's just a checklist we put together and things to think about with a conditional use permit. So what do I mean? And let's pull your code, and you guys all know this by heart. You actually have it in your packet, because I know you have an item on the agenda, and I think I saw it in your packet there, that you have the standards in your actual ordinance there. So let's talk about the state law and how your ordinance meets that, some things you may want to consider as you work through conditional uses. And I heard from Ken that you actually do get a lot of conditional use permits. And so that's the other thing, as you see these coming through, is to, I always say, you keep a checklist of what's working in this ordinance and what's not, and that you address those. There's no reason to keep, if it's really broken, and there are things in here, that tools that you have available to you but you don't have in here, then you know you have the process to be able to just take a 6-month timeout and say, let's fix it. So completely, I don't know if that's the case, you may be very happy with your ordinance, but just know that that's a tool that's available to you. Okay, so we talked about what the definition is and what a conditional use is. So again, do you wanna, I'm gonna put you back on the spot. What would you now having you blab for a while, what would you say a conditional use is?
It's something that, just because of the nature of whatever it is, they need some additional conditions basically to mitigate any problems that arise.
Basically, it's a permitted use in the zone with conditions that we can attach. I guess that's my summary of that big paragraph in the state law. Do you guys concur? Okay. See, and they know all of this too. They just want me to say it for them. You guys have some excellent staff here that can always help you on this. Okay, so what am I talking about when I say standards or criteria? So one of the things is if you decide that you want conditional uses, which you've decided to do, here's the little tweak in conditional uses. So we have to have a process, we have to have standards. Why do we have to have that?
It's the same every time.
Everybody the same with the same review criteria. Here's the anomaly with conditional use permits. Something on one block may be very different than something 2 blocks away. But as long as I have that same set of standards that I'm reviewing all the application with, then it allows me to look at, have those differences come in, but I'm still treating people fairly, but I can adjust or account for those differences. So we may have that miniature golf course that wants to go next to Mrs. Smith's house on 1 block, but 2 blocks away, it's all vacant land and there's no residences and it's all zoned industrial or something. So again, different set of criteria, right, that I'm gonna be looking at of that use. So in my example that I've given you, and again, standards criteria, please take that as interchangeable because I see that you kind of have standards and I'm saying they're criteria, and there may be a little difference of opinion of how those are laid out, but it's not a big deal. It's just the fact that you have to have them. So when I talk about criteria, is we have very generic criteria, and we need to list them out. And you've done that in a way in your section E, conditions may be imposed. You start to list the criteria that you're going to look at or use. So when an application comes in, you're going to look at those criteria in that section E. You're gonna say, let's see, do we need to limit the size and shape of the building, the development of streets, the installation or upsizing of utilities, screening or landscaping? And that's what's reflected here on that handout on page 121. And I would suggest, and if this works for you, this is just a suggestion, but sometimes I find that if you actually list those criteria in a more generic fashion, in a broader category, that gives you more flexibility to impose conditions. Because the thing here is, if you get a project before you and doesn't meet any of these condition may be imposed section, these criteria you have in here, you can't impose a condition on it. So whatever you write here, so if I say I want installation and sizing of utility mains, and I need that on one project, I can do it. But let's say, for example, I want street lighting to be shielded because it's next to Mrs. Smith's house. I don't see anything here about lighting. You cannot impose a condition because you don't have any relationship in your code to impose that condition. You don't have that criteria. Are you guys following me somewhat? So that's when, if you look at on page 121, you've got listed out here really basic standards. And if you look at the example on 122, and again, this is from Fillmore's code, their general review criteria are very broad. And you can have as many or as few as you want. But the reason they did that broadly was because landscaping, utility capacity, broader, right? It can give you more flexibility for that specific application. Parking, fencing, screening, lighting, they wanted to go on because they had some environmental slope retention and flood issues. So if there's, again, you really need to match up those criteria with a condition. So when I make a finding, I'm going to say, this application we have before us tonight, we need to upsize our utilities. And in section E of our code, it says we can put a condition on there to upsize the utilities, and here's why we need to do it. And here's how that's going to help mitigate this project in that neighborhood. They match. There's a correlation. Okay? But if we found out on this one that, oh my gosh, we really need to make sure, and am I missing lighting in here? Because I don't want to pick the one that I don't have, but it doesn't seem like there's lighting in here. You have design and shape of buildings, screening and landscaping. So I'm just using that as an example. Let's say, again, you need to ask them to shield their lights. Or in one case, maybe it's next to a residence and you are going to ask them to turn their lights off at 11. Or, that you can't have 24-hour lighting. Let's say the lights of that use shine into a residential lot. You cannot, with this code, you could do it, but if you're challenged, you won't survive the challenge, because what the court's going to look at is that connection, or that nexus is the word that they use, that correlation. Did the Pleasant Grove Planning Commission have a basis to require them to shield their lights on that spot to mitigate that lighting into Mrs. Smith's bedroom light at midnight?
Again, because it all has to be fair, like Peter said, and if somebody else has come along and not been judged by the same criteria, and you're saying, I want you to, we're gonna say lighting is a problem here and it wasn't a problem over there. That, this guy's gonna point to that guy and say, that one there.
Yeah,
Right.
and that's the broader thing is, oh shoot, I just lost my thought. Yes, you would be completely subjective, right?
Mhm.
And ordinances are supposed to be objective. And again, like that single family building permit application, your criteria are very objective, right? Height, setbacks, landscaping, whatever it is, parking. Boom, boom, boom. Check, check, check. So we have to do this here, but it's in a little bit of a different vein. It's very broad. It's landscaping, it's lighting, it's traffic. It's, the old catch-all health, safety, welfare, which I totally don't know how we can ever really tie something to that, because it seems to me that's just so open-ended. So again, in the example that I present to you, again, they've got those criteria, and what they've done, and this has seemed to work well for them. And again, you can add these broad categories, but I really recommend that you take a look at that section E that you have and think about those categories. And the one caution I have is that or other changes that you have in there. It's just,
Then we're covered, basically.
yeah.
Other, that includes lighting.
That's what we meant. So question,
Take shutters if you feel like it one night.
Question for you.
Yes.
Would it be then,
Hi.
it seems to me it would make sense that maybe the chair has kind of a checklist when we do a conditional use. That these are those items that are in code, and then the commission can discuss each category of where conditions might be applied and kind of make sure we didn't miss anything, and we don't ask for anything that we're not allowed to ask for.
Absolutely, that would be my recommendation. In a perfect world, you would have that list, and I would say I have the application here before me tonight. We have our review criteria list. Okay, let's look at this application in regarding to circulation. Let's look at it in regarding to lighting. Let's look at it in regarding to utility capacity. Let's look at it in regards to emergency vehicle access. Let's look at it in regard to parking. Let's look at it in regard to lighting. There's your due process. And here's the rub, hopefully we're all with that idea. The rub is I have those criteria for your application, but lighting may not be a problem when you bring in your application to me. You may not be anywhere near anyone who cares about lighting. Your application, I looked at lighting, but lighting is an issue. So, but I have that authority, that ability to place that condition on there. So that's the unique little twist in conditional use permits. We're still gonna have those standards of review. We're gonna march through them, but one guy may have lighting issues, one may not, and that's based on location. That's the nuance with conditional use permits. But really easy to deal with if you have that criteria list, which you have here in E. I would just suggest that you maybe have a discussion on that. And if these work for you, that's fine. Just, the other changes makes me nervous, but you want to be as specific as possible.
So obviously we have our criteria, but we have to see it's a case by case basis. It has to be.
Yep.
Even though we have our criteria. That's the point, right? So, I mean,
Yep.
that's the whole purpose is that one size doesn't fit all, and that's it.
Exactly right. You've got it right there. Case by case
'Cause I know
with criteria. Maybe
I've
that's
said that a
better
few times, and
definition.
sometimes I think some of the commissioners, I don't know if they agree or disagree, but
Yeah, that's what the law says from the state. It says if you're gonna do this, have these criteria, treat everyone fairly with due process,
Right.
and make your findings specific to that property, because absolutely it's case by case. And that's where it's a little hard to translate that to the public or the applicant. But when you have those criteria, it makes it a lot easier, because you say, this is really what we're reviewing your application against. We're making sure that it fits. We may need to work with you because of this X, Y, or Z situation. And hopefully that clarifies it to them as well as you. And again, back to my other soapbox, make sure those conditional uses work. If they're not, get them out of there. Just amend your ordinance.
I've always been interested in zoning. One of the reasons my dad was on a planning commission, but beyond that, when I was in college, in Provo, got a gigantic dance club built. And when I did that, we had to change the ordinance to begin with. And the reason that we changed the ordinance is because one of the things that, and it's something that I've always paid attention to, is that a city shouldn't preclude a use by an overly restrictive ordinance. They should just say, we don't do that here, period, not make it impossible to meet all the standards, right?
I agree with you on that, absolutely. I say if your job is to make the decision what. The state says you decide what is good for Pleasant Grove. We're gonna give you that flexibility. You just need to follow our processes for noticing, due process. But absolutely, why would you, if you've gone through the hard work, and it's hard work, and that's sometimes why we don't do it, or sometimes we just do it because we always did it. But yeah, say, hey, this is what we want. Welcome. Here's how to do it. this is what we want in our community. And in some cases, we may need to take put you through another level of process, but that benefits all of us. It's for the,
But we want it,
You
or
know?
we don't want it, or we allow it, we don't allow it. We don't just say, we're not gonna allow that by way of making this impossible for you to comply with.
absolutely right. You don't use the process to kill an application or lots of hurdles or hoops. What's the point of that besides brain damage for everybody, right? You've decided that you want folks to participate in your community in different fashions, and so let them do that with the rules and just make the rules as clear as possible. So all great points. The other thing here, just to mention while we're on this review criteria, is the other reason I gave you this example. This is on page 123 of that little shorter handout. Is that in Fillmore, they decided that really they already knew, like I was saying before, that they had certain extra conditions that they wanted on some specific uses, adult-oriented businesses, home occupation, and they just listed them there. And so you can do that. So like if you have a gravel pit or if you have some other use and you know there are things that general review criteria really aren't going to address, then you can do that. So just so you know, it's a tool that's available to you. You can have the general review, but if there's some real specific use and you know, like a home occupation is perfect. It's really a conditional use, right? But it's administrative in a sense. I don't know, how do you guys do you just staff
We
approve
have
it?
minor and major, so minor
Okay.
are up to a certain point in impact in the resident or in the neighborhood, and staff approves or disapproves those. Then if it reaches a certain threshold of criteria in the ordinance, then it becomes a major home occupation, it's conditional use.
Okay, really? So yeah, so if you know what those criteria are for that major, they've just spelled it out here because they knew it and they did it, and it just saved everyone a whole bunch of time when they kind of condensed it. So that's the concept, that's the criteria. And so what's the process? Well, the state says you, again, write in the code what your process is. They do not require a public hearing. All they require is that you hold it in a public meeting and that someone's designated to take final action on the permit. That term, the land use authority, which was you're probably all familiar with, but if the council's designated you to take action, then you're the land use. If you're just recommending to them, then they're the land use authority. So do you take final action on conditional use permits? Okay, so you guys are the land use authority. So a question, we talk here about appeals, we talk about modification, expiration, the application for the permit, so you have the process, and then you guys hold a public hearing. So again, the state does not require a public hearing, and they in 2007, they made a bunch of changes and they removed a lot of the public hearing requirements in the statute that had been there. And they did that because they were saying, cities and towns, you figure out what the best process to administer is, but we think maybe there are too many levels of process, and we're gonna just give you where we think a public hearing definitely needs to be held, and then you can decide whether you need one at that level or not. And in this area, they said no. And anyone want to guess why they said it doesn't need a public hearing? You have been you're off the hook. So I am going to ask Dalen. And again, there are no wrong answers. I'm just doing this because I want you guys to own this, because you're going to be the ones processing the application. So what would you, just if you had to guess, why do you think the state said you don't need a public hearing on a conditional use permit?
Because they have a planning commission that could do just the same thing, or the state body can do.
Because we're an administrative body and not a legislative body, so hearing from a ton of testimony from all the neighbors doesn't always help a lot.
And now I know why he's chair.
We're also not allowed to
Those are
use that.
Those are great, both great answers, but yes, that's exactly it. It's administrative. So you know your separation of duties. Legislate is when you're dealing with creating ordinances and making recommendations. That's policy. This is administrative. And really, yes, we care about the public, but we have an ordinance and we have review criteria, and this isn't, and we have the uses that were approved in that zone. So the input process would have come when those uses were approved, right? So here's the thing with public hearings, whatever works best for you, but if you do hold a public hearing, here's what I would suggest. And maybe you've gone through this and it works great for you. I would suggest that you do it for informational purposes. It's not, and make it clear that it's not that we can deny this and your input is going to help us deny this. It's not a popularity contest on the use. The use is something that's in our code, and our job here tonight is to see if our criteria and our conditions can make this the best possible project for the city of Pleasant Grove. And we would love to know if you have some information that might help us. Is there a haunted mine in the back of the property that only Mrs.
We need
Smith
to write
knew
down
about?
exactly what you just said there.
Yeah.
Because that's the problem is the public thinks, oh, well, we had 10 people that were against this
So you can.
and one, a few in favor, therefore you must deny it. Or, and so it's not a popularity contest.
And then we're out of control.
Yep.
And then we're not popular.
So,
No, we take bribes.
That was very well said.
I
We
think
should
what we've
state that at
done
the beginning.
recently, and it's been helpful, is upfront, Drew, sorry. You have done this recently to kind of explain upfront before we even get into the item. The conditional use permit is a permitted use, and we're here to place conditions or not. So, and I think, some people, even after you explain that, still don't understand. But I think that we try to prevent that.
okay. So that's one great tip, is at the chair at the beginning of the meeting. Another tip is on the agenda, that it's put administrative. The second thing is, do you need that public hearing? Could you do an informational meeting earlier in the process? I don't know. I'm throwing out suggestions. But if you do that public hearing, then what's the notice that you send out? And maybe that notice, all the notice provisions that are required under state law is the date, the time, and the place. Anything else we put in there is what we want to put in there. Maybe people read them, maybe they don't. But again, what are we asking of the public? And so that notice, I think, is important. The framing at the meeting is important. And you're absolutely right. You're still going to get people complaining, but that's part of our job is education, not only ourselves, and we're going to have different public. So it's repetitive, but it's the same message. So those are just some strategies or tips.
Royce, will you pay attention to that with the noticing, and let's look at what we're sending out and see if the language on the notice itself can be something that lets them know this is an administrative, we're gathering information kind of thing, or, you're not going to be able to come and vote.
Right. I agree.
Yeah.
This is not a town meeting.
Yeah, and again, whatever you put in that is what you want beyond date, time, and place. So just another suggestion. So yeah, something to think about. And then the stuff on your appeals and enforcement, that all looks great, and your revoking the permit, all that same process. So my only suggestion would be looking at that B standard section and that E conditions may be imposed, and maybe thinking that through a little bit, because I'm not really sure, are the standards what you use now as the checklist, or is it E as your checklist when you have an application? Or do you use a little both?
I would think, and perhaps we need to redo our ordinance a little bit so that they are together. But I would think both act as a checklist.
Okay, so it's just something to discuss as you guys work through it. But just even while you're working through these, I would still recommend highly, when you make a motion or you're reviewing the application, try to work through these as your starting point. as, to be kind of uniform with folks, so like, the one you have tonight, I don't know how far into it, but just, take that as a starting point and just walk through it and,
Can I ask what you're referencing right there? What
yeah,
section?
this is your code, your conditional use code, and I think there's one in your packet for your
This
planning
packet here?
commission tonight.
Oh,
Right?
No, it's
Oh.
the
Side.
It's our
The
staff package.
See, and I don't have one.
Oh.
Again, so I'm like,
Because the chair is always in the dark.
I'll just wing it.
Do you want me to make copies?
Hey, Rose, do you have anything?
It's in
It's in that package.
your packet,
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't know, it's
Yeah,
down there.
Just take item number one.
There we go.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's in the packet, item number one.
Okay, never mind, I got it.
Just got the standards for accessory buildings. or that-
Yeah, your staff wonderfully provided it for you, which is awesome. So just always use that. That's great. That's it. Your code. Go back to your code, refer to your code, link to your code. I know it may seem redundant, but that's what's going to keep you in good stead, I think. So, we've talked really about everything in this little packet. And I think we've gone over some things in your code. So specific questions, you want to take a specific case and walk through one, just process wise, or what's going to be most useful for you guys? Or is,
Can we hypothetically walk through one that's potentially on the agenda tonight? Probably not.
Hypothetically walk through one you just ran.
Yeah, how about we talk about, we can talk about the Verizon wireless one, we can talk about Sterling Bourne.
Because they're done. We
Can I
can't
ask a
talk
question?
Well,
about,
Sterling Bourne is not
Trail.
yet
Yeah, he's
resolved,
still in
and I don't know
appeal.
if you all know, but it did go to the Board of Adjustment, but
We were
there
there.
was a concern about the filing date and not meeting that, and so it may be an invalid application.
Okay.
So it may turn out it's been continued, but it may turn out that that whole appeal might be
Well,
denied.
that's what I said earlier. I heard a rumor that it might be going away. Can I ask a question first?
Yeah.
Okay, so you said there's some cities that don't do conditional use at all. What's that look like and what's the pros and cons of doing that?
okay, well, so let's look at your, again, and I just pulled one, but so you have this neighborhood commercial zone. And you have your list of permitted uses, and then you have your list of conditional uses. So what that would look like is, and is just that you would have permitted uses in your zone. And your permitted uses, if you wanted on some, like let's say for instance, again, miniature golf. Let's say that we really know that that fits in the zone, and here are some of the standards that we want, parking, lighting, something. You put those like in the code, so you have that, just very much like that single family residence. So it's kind of a tighter code in the sense that everything's in there, your standards. And remember that zoning is fluid, okay? And I know the process seems overwhelming sometimes, but it's not, we don't have to live with these zoning districts if they're not working for us. They're meant to evolve with the maturation and changes in our community. So there's obviously a process that we need to go through, but it's not, if there's no way that a miniature golf should be in the neighborhood commercial, we should amend our code and get it out of there. And to give you kind of a better example of what I'm talking about in the Fillmore code, when they talk about those specific review criteria, like, let's say for a home occupation, like, I don't see why it actually couldn't just be a permitted use if you meet those standards, check, 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 check. And see what I'm saying? They list them out. You have to have 2 employees, you have to have 1 fence and 8 signs or whatever it may be. So that's how it would look, is you would just have your permitted uses, and if you had some that you knew you wanted some extra standards on, you just put them right in there.
Okay, what's the pros and cons of going into not having conditional uses?
I don't know, I kind of like not having them, because it seems to me it's cleaner and it's clearer to your community. And the conditional use is so misused, but with now all that you understand it, and you can go out now and teach other planning commissioners all the pros and cons of it. It's just a matter of education and getting it out there that it really is a permitted use with conditions. It's flexibility maybe.
What cities are doing that so we can look at their codes and how they run?
I would have to give you, I'd have to give you the exact list, because I know a couple, but I know some others just
What about,
got rid of theirs.
what about
so-
cities? See, I think the lack of flexibility, because I don't know that the code can anticipate every single situation every time.
Yeah.
I think that, I mean, the code book would be like 3 times as thick as it is now if you did that, for one. But, I'm looking the other way. Are there some that say, look, who does it? What does a city look like that does everything's conditional? Is that a little tiny city?
Yeah.
Usually?
It's our little small guys on the Wasatch Front.
Is that because they're so small that they don't have staff to handle everything and so they're just gonna deal with it? Or, they don't have a lot of code developed yet?
Kind of a combination of that, lack of staff, lack of code development, control. Small towns, the council wants to be everything to everybody and wants to see everything that comes through the door.
My wife has been watching Gilmore Girls. I get that,
So there's political, there's, resources. But in some ways, if they have their criteria laid out, it kind of makes sense. It's size, right? I mean, it's size. It's really the size.
So is it that New York City doesn't have many conditional conditional uses because they are so big, everything's codified to the point where it's like, we've been doing this for 300 years, we're gonna keep doing it this way, and we've kind of addressed everything, and if you're coming up with something new, then we're gonna actually develop an ordinance that deals with this?
Yeah, and that's more where Salt Lake's kind of been leaning to over the years, and also making stuff a lot more administrative, because they're fortunate to have staff. So like a home occupation, or if it was a mini golf, they just give it to staff, because it's a checklist, right? And then
Yeah.
if there's an issue or a problem, then they need your level
Well,
of review.
I just did a flag lot. I helped some clients go through the flag lot process in Provo. And it was all administrative. And here, it wouldn't have been administrative, they would have come to us. So,
Right. So that's the other thing that the state asks, is they say, planning commission, one of your jobs is to look at how you process things in the city as far as land use applications and make a recommendation to the council. Again, the council make the big bucks, make the big decisions. So, but that's certainly part of your job, is to say, look, this maybe makes a lot more sense this way or that way. That's one of your duties under the state mandate.
okay.
So we have done that in the past, so for your example brought that to mind, Ken asked the council about minor subdivisions, which a flag lot generally is. And the council said, no, we want to stay with the process which we have, which is generally a preliminary plat to planning commission, final plat to us.
Yep.
So if you're seeing a lot of approvals that are coming through, like for example, if you have a lot of conditional uses that you're never imposing conditions on, basically saying, well, this conditional use meets the code, like this accessory building, for example, or this home occupation business. I guess if cities looked at situations like that and said, well, we've given, this many conditional use permits without any conditions, maybe we should just
Move it straight into
move it straight
the
to an administrative.
Absolutely, and I know you have an issue with accessory apartments. One community did just that. They were approving so many and it fit, and they kept, and it was also the same with variances too. Like, in some instances, there are setback issues for use, and they finally just said, this is ridiculous, we want it, and make it a permitted use. So absolutely, 100%. Yep.
Maybe home music schools.
Yeah.
Art and music.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Maybe there are some things we need to look at that we should just take out of.
We've seen this 6 times this year, this is done. I agree. I think that's the perfect example, and you guys should work on taking that out of the art and music schools should be out of there. It's one of them.
Because you can set standards for
Yeah.
parking and things like that.
Yeah.
Just say this
I
is
think
it.
they're already set in
Yeah.
most of the conditional use or in the ordinance.
Well,
itself.
I don't know that they're set, but we suggest the same dang thing every time.
Yeah.
Right?
I thought we
There
just
needs to
amended-
be
didn't we just
4
amend
free
that this year,
spaces
though?
that-
We did, we increased it.
The Reynolds,
So yeah, it would be.
We're loosening.
Or was that-
So
Yeah, but
that's what we
anytime you
did is
change
we're
the code,
loosening
it has to come through us, right?
Yeah, but if you change the code once versus having 500 conditional use.
But as I said, I'd rather have us reviewing code than us doing conditional use 24/7. So if it's in the code and we need to change the code, I'd rather have that in front of me
Well, maybe
than a
that's
bunch
what,
of conditional uses
So that's what
time
we
and
did
time
on
and
that.
time again.
yeah, but that's what we need to do, is we need to keep our eyes open for something like that. And say, look, but we approve these every single time with these 4 conditions. Let's just put that in the code and get it out of a conditional use.
Right. So I think probably what would be a good idea, if it sounds like you're leaning towards this direction, that we maybe once a month go through a section or a zone, whatever, and just review the conditional uses and say, okay, should this be permitted? Should this be prohibited? And, or what are the specific criteria we should apply if we're gonna leave it here?
What if we did that instead of just addressing the entire code? What if we do it based on, we've seen this 3 times in the last 6 months?
We can do that.
But aren't you don't you just run into the same problem because we increased the number of students the music teacher can have to 8? And so that's in the code now, so we didn't give her a conditional use permit, we just changed the code.
Right.
So now the next person's gonna come and want 10, right?
But
And try to-
we'll be addressing the code, we're not gonna be putting a conditional use.
Right,
Well,
but it's,
so-
isn't it the same
But
issue?
based on the code, they're just gonna be denied.
Yeah,
Oh,
because,
well, but they're gonna apply to amend the code,
Well,
right?
they could, but
If
the eyes, the color glasses that we use on the code is, how does this apply to all properties in the community, not just this property?
Okay, so,
So
Make
we should take a deeper review and decide, do we really want to change the code?
And it needs to be able to, we don't wanna take it out of conditional use if it's one of those things that you can't, yeah, if you can't say, well, this applies 95% of the time. That's why we're talking about
right,
art and music schools, is because I mean, when was the last time we said, you're not doing one of those? We get to a swimming pool.
But when was the last time you had an art and music school in a townhouse or in an apartment building? We don't get those requests.
I
We
know.
get those requests in the R1 zone, so I think the thing on the code is to, all of the names here. Levi's comment is, there are still reasons why this particular use may not be a fit. So let's not be too quick to change the code because it has implications everywhere.
Yes, but you go ahead and every single time, it's always a suggestion that you have a certain amount of available parking. And a townhouse isn't gonna have that kind of available parking,
I'm
which
just saying.
solves the problem.
It's still important to recognize why we have some
Yeah.
of these conditional uses because
Right.
it's because we're not sure that we know how it fits everywhere.
Well, and I think you could pull it the other way too. If it doesn't work repeatedly and there's a problem, then you can pull it back out of, this is a administrative, the code just addresses this, and you can put it back into a conditional use too. There may be chickens, there could be things that you say, okay, this is a permitted use by code and it's driving everybody crazy. And so you pull it back in to where you can have some conditions that might mitigate the problem.
And the thing is, Ken suggested, obviously go through by the different zones, so it could be a different answer in a different zone, based on that, so.
Which is how you do it already.
Yep, zone specific. So when I get back, I'll look for that information and
I just wanna see how they do it.
And, so if there are any other questions or discussion, I would, want to take 30 seconds of your time, to test you out on something. We are developing a Land Use Academy of Utah website. We are trying to put up their, land use topics, like what is planning, what is a general plan, what is zoning, really basic concepts that will be online videos and tutorials, and then it will get more advanced, things like what's eminent domain, what are vested rights, why do we care, but we're at the very, very basic stages right now. And one of the things we've put together is definitions, because I think it's also critical to have, to understand, again, the concept like we talked about tonight. So we're gonna have probably, 10 million definitions, but they're little quick vignettes, like a 5 or 10 second, just this is what it is. So we're working toward that in conjunction with the Utah APA and Property Ombudsman's Office. I hate that word. And we're trying to put this package together that will be a free resource for you as planning commissioners and elected officials, and so this is the one that we just, did on conditional use permits. But I wanted to give you a little taste, and, you know, again, we're trying to get into the, virtual world to give you another resource, so that late at night, when you can't sleep, you can click on videos and watch what is planning.
So we don't have the sound tied into the system here, so we just have to turn up
In
the
case you're.
Put a mic in front
laptop
of it.
as loud.
Share.
Well, actually, the computer, the protector does have speakers.
Does it?
What is a CUP? A useless process? Careful, use precisely. No, a CUP is a land use term for conditional use permit. Conditional use means a land use that, because of its unique characteristics or potential impact on the municipality, surrounding neighbors, or adjacent land uses, may not be compatible in some areas or may be compatible only if certain conditions are required that mitigate or eliminate the detrimental impacts. It is an effort to attach conditions that minimize the potential harmful impacts of a use that a community has already decided it wants in an area. The bottom line, if we do it right, we can attach conditions to help it fit in the neighborhood and reduce any bad effects.
No standing ovation? So that's.
Your voice, isn't it?
Yeah, it's my voice. So that's the concept, and, you know, as we develop this, I know this is just, but is that something that,
It's awesome. What was the website again?
it's gonna be the Land Use Academy of Utah. We're not live yet, we're in beta, so we're still making all these videos and trying to figure this out, but, I mean, is that something, especially as a new plan commissioner, would that have been helpful?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't wanna keep marching down this road if you guys, I will never click on it. Okay, all right, well, I appreciate your patience and thank you very much, and you guys are doing great work and your code looks great, just little minor tweaks as always, that's always what it is, it's always looking and adjusting, so good luck, and in any way I can be of help, let Ken know, and happy to help you guys in the future. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we want to go ahead and do our work session for 15 minutes and maybe do a 5-minute
On your,
break and then do work
Meg?
session?
on your website, what's the time period before it goes live?
We're
Estimated.
We're shooting for the first of the year. We're gonna do a soft rollout this fall and see, and then go big.
The work
And how
session-
are you
We do
gonna, how will we know when that's happens?
Believe me, we'll let you guys will know. No ad nauseum. We do newly elected training, which is coming up this year, and so we're gonna broadcast it there. We do a legislative day on the Hill, we'll broadcast it there, plus they'll get like 9,000 emails from us about it. So they'll know.
I just wanna know what those lines are.
Okay, thanks.
Well, let's go ahead and
Drew, why don't you
completely,
explain for those public that are here,
Yeah.
what the schedule is?
okay. We're going to adjourn for 5 minutes and then, what, is adjourn the right word? We're going to close the meeting, or recess the meeting.
And you're going.
Right, we're gonna recess
We're gonna close it.
for 5 minutes and then, we'll re-adjourn and, work room.
You can do it
or a
here.
work session. We want to do that?
Work
think-
session is
I think
available.
we'd like to do it in there, so.
That's fine, but it
It's
is open
public,
to the
sure.
public.
I think we'd like to go in there and do the work session that we normally do this time. And then we'll, the meeting, the real meeting will start at 7:30, which is what it's noticed for.
Changing that. So.
Good, if you're carried it for you?
Do you want me to get standard food, have you got?
Yeah. We normally meet at 7.
Get it on tape, kids are gonna grab it. I don't think that's
It's in the kitchen down the hall, so you're welcome to. They're just going to review the agenda. They're gonna ask questions about what's on the agenda. Okay.
So basically just do something next week. So if you wanna come, you can.
Yeah, it's not an official meeting. You'll have your chance in the meeting. They'll call and ask anything you want to say, reasoning. But you're welcome. But that won't be an official decision. All right.
Go see what's at the promenade.
All right.
I'm hanging in there.
Oh.
This will be planning commission. They have to do training first. Planning commission starts in just a second. That was the training, planning commission. The real meeting starts in just a second. Are you standing up to do? Are you on the agenda?
And the agenda items is so, our side of Pleasant Grove. Preliminary subdivision for flag lots. And what was the Tom Adamson pasture? That property right there.
Is that where you live?
My mother is this right there.
Okay, they will open it up for discussion.
So-
Yeah.
My only concern is, have we identified clearly the boundary lines?
What they do when they get to your agenda, if you haven't been here before, you see people will stand up and they'll do a PowerPoint and present, and give you all a ton of what information that they have, which might answer your question or may not. And then they will open it up for public comment. And if you want to say something at that point, you stand up and you can say it at that point. And then they will discuss among themselves too what information. So they kind of go through a three-part thing. So you'll get your, sometimes your question's answered by just having I present.
Yeah.
And your other city present, and you're like, that just answered my question, thank you.
Well, I
Sometimes
have,
not.
I have a list of
Good.
questions that I was asked. See, my mother's not feeling well, so.
Are you with, do you know, are you related to Tommy Adamson?
They were just backyard neighbors forever.
I think I know where he lives, but right below the canal. Or where he grew up.
Not,
On the 500 north.
they lived, okay,
You have a different one. By the, there's a church.
no,
No, okay, then they're not.
they lived on, 200 north and 100 east.
Okay, way different then, okay.
Do you know where Phyllis Thompson used to live? You know where the Mill Creek stream comes through? where John Hancock Charter School is?
Yes.
Okay. So on the map, this is John Hancock property right here. So you have a little white house here and then remodeled. They used to own this and actually they owned all of that. And so they have a house here and grandma lived there.
Is this house really old?
Uh-huh. Old white house, really pretty neat, cool.
I love.
Yeah.
I love it.
And my
So
mother
this is
owns,
the flag lot.
so this is the flag. So, well, I mean, you know, does the 4 flag lot house include this as one of the 4? Or, see the questions, or
Yeah.
is it this plus 4 others because size-wise on the card, it says it's 1.08,
Acres. Yeah.
which to put 4 houses in there, that's,
There's code in the city that says with acreage of how much lot you have to have, and then you can pick that code for everything. So you'll be able to, I'm sure, get the answer before you ever have to step
and see,
back.
my mother owns this, so, I mean, this is kind of goofy, I'm not sure what's happening here, but she owns, there's a little,
Is this for future sidewalks?
this is where the ditch comes right along through here.
Oh, yeah, that's just.
So, I don't know what that is. But the house here, so my parents own this here, the house here is, like I said, 130 years old.
Wow, that's old. Have they kept it up?
Pretty nice.
I love it. We have one house and they actually keep it up.
Pretty decent, but, and this was Dad's garden. But he was at one point before he passed away, gonna just subdivide and sell that off and give it a quarter acre. So I don't know how big this is. This says this is only 0.82 acres.
Where did you get this from, the city
You know,
or the county?
I honestly don't know.
The county has pretty good records. on
My
it.
neighbor, see, I didn't find out about this until a couple of days ago. Because the notes went to my mother and my little sister lives with my mother and I didn't. Anyway. I have a neighbor who's a realtor. So last night we just said, can you help me? Can you get out of plat map? She said, sure. So that's what she did. So,
Yeah, we should cut it from the county, because I think that the county has, I think we have to report to the county, we, the city has to, don't quote me on that. I think the city has to report to the county, so the county has pretty good records. As long as the reporting from the city is done, then within the right amount of time, so I think we should report to the county. And like, if you can use the county website, we're downloading it now, I don't think you have to go in there, I think you can pull up maps now without having to and print your own stuff.
I guess what I should have done is walk this off and see.
Yeah.
Because
You'll have to
this,
see if your map matches what they have. That'll be
Yes.
interesting.
cause see, this guy that lived here, Tom Adams, what was his name? Okay, Tom had just a barbed wire fence up. Because from about right here back, all of this
That's a British shaped lot too.
was horse pasture. Yeah, and so there was scuttlebutt about, see that little jog right there? Okay, that was goofy.
Yeah,
So-
well, it is good for them now looking at it. That's just
So
really weird shape.
the little old lady that lived here claimed it and Dad said, fine, and I think he might have deeded it over to her, but it doesn't look like he did.
Oh, okay.
But the fence was not actually actual property. The fan, and there was, it came out here and so like if this was the property line, the fence was about right
It needs to be surveyed again.
here. And there's a difference of like 19 feet. So that's why I would, yeah, I don't know that I'm opposed to it. I just want,
How big the lots are
I
gonna
want to know how big the lots are gonna be, and I want to know, if the survey is accurate.
be. And the board who surveyed it, yeah.
Yeah.
You might want to sit up closer because they'll be showing, they show a lot of stuff. Yeah, back here you won't see a thing.
No,
So
I
you
just
can get a
looked
good
because
view.
I thought the meeting started at 7.
It normally, it does. Tonight, they have a training from someone up in Salt Lake that they needed to have. And they decided to do it a little bit earlier, start the training earlier, and I think the training ran a little bit into the time.
But are all of these people the planning commission? Because
Yeah, they are, and then the alternates come as well.
I thought,
They have alternates as well.
so what's Frank Johnson?
I don't think he's on the planning.
And
Is he on the board of adjusters?
I don't know.
Because the planning commission, that name doesn't sound like anyone on the planning commission.
Stephanie Green. Gail Christie Hanson. Okay, what commission are they on?
They could be on the board of adjustments, which is the appeal board for planning commission.
Probably so
Or
because,
they could be on the water control.
see, my neighbor from where I live has been,
I don't know who their meetings ever. I go to every one of these and all the same meetings, but, the board of adjusters, I've never sat in on one of their meetings yet, so I actually don't know who's on.
and they were, so is the planning commission every Thursday?
Every 2 weeks, so it's every other.
Because it was last Thursday here in this room.
Then it was the board of adjustments. It's probably what it was, because the planning commission meets every 2 weeks here. And so, and city council meets every Tuesday. Well, they're now down to 3 Tuesdays. They decided to take 1 Tuesday and 1 off. So 3 Tuesdays now.
So, I know this is not gonna work well for me, but, so who did Eric Jensen replace?
He replaced Jay.
Jay Beacom was my assistant baseball coach for a couple of years.
He wanted to step down a little bit earlier. This is going to be done in December, but he stepped down earlier, so they appointed Jay or Eric. He's a nice man.
No, it's Jay Beacom.
Yes. He's a nice man too. I don't know, I know he was looking at a job, but I don't know his reasons behind it.
Sorry, Jay's son Weston.
Where your question is coming up, there's
Played ball with my local area, they were the same age, also.
I never see Jay.
I coached and I said, hey, do you wanna help? And he'd go, you bet. So he was kind of my assistant coach, and we just enjoyed each other. Now the other ones,
Yeah, we have to be careful. I can do it.
you don't like what?
I don't like socialism. Can't take it. That's how I judge people.
Define what you mean by socialism.
They vote for the Constitution.
See, the thing that bothers me is the girl movement.
I'll check in and myself.
it's just one of those nights.
All right.
You changed the time on it, didn't it?
Yeah. So. But you're retired from this job.
I've been in for a couple of years. I only look like Pretty retired.
Well, you're good. You got 28 years as a classroom teacher at Princeton. And then retired in about 2 years, so I have 30 years listed in state retirement. And just kind of did it. I don't want to say it was him. Prompting that I was retired now. Because it was something I needed to do, and it was going to be very important. And I spent 13 months taking care of my life. So I get ready for it.
I think they're still back in there.
And
Oh, I know, I was looking for them.
I figured, I'll retire, figure out what I'm supposed to do, and then I'll get a job. And then after he passed away, I said, okay, well, I'll get a job now.
Yeah, sorry. I'll be right back. Sorry. We're just down to the last 4 minutes.
Come through here, please. 25 cents for everybody. Yeah, so that's the thing. Modify that. Permission from the facility manager before you do that, so you don't feel that it's well, thanks, Skip.
It's so nice, the whole fence is closed, there's not a gate.
Yeah, we have the hop fence.
So how did people do it? They just don't jump?
Hop it, yeah.
Really?
It's got 3 bars.
Well, no women do that then. It's just like
It's just
kids.
probably a sad day for that one. Oh, yeah.
She wants to know, there's 2 different, you see? So she wants to make sure that it's not the same position.
And ours is on the same. For moving prior, she would do this. And then I need to give the statements or something like that. And I can send these. Yeah, I'm like, gosh. Yeah, it's a requirement from the bank. I just think that's a lot.
Oh. I gave Royce the flat map with our. Yeah, it's like he has all this stuff like
If I stood in a corner of that room, it's stupid. And if I keep my head down, it's really stupid. She can start taking Social Security at 62. We've heard that if we're 18, she's 65. It would be. And we wait till she's 66.
It was too far away, right?
We're there in like 20 minutes.
Okay, very good. Good, very good. Good, Are those cheeses? Extra. How about
They have an island range, so he's out doing his doing nice. Yeah, I think.
Gas, box. Lights the rocks on fire.
Nice. It was all kill.
I think there needs to be sort of that. But I wanted to see the difference between all and nothing. Because I want to get the pros and cons of not having any, because I don't know if I need it.
It's just.
It's probably like 3 different things.
And then we buy
Okay, well, we're already a couple minutes behind, so we'll call to order the planning commission meeting for August 27th, 2015 for the city of Pleasant Grove. And I haven't asked anybody to give the opening remarks or the latest in the pledge. And so Peter, will you lead us in the pledge? And Matt, will you give us opening remarks today? Can you do that?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Father in heaven, we're grateful for the opportunity that we have to gather today and ask the beginning of this meeting, Father, that thou will bless us with thy spirit, and we may have understanding of the business at hand, and that we will have thy spirit to guide us in the decisions that are made, and we pray that we will do so in a civil manner, and that items of business will be resolved as they should be. Thank thee for our many blessings, and say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
For the record, we probably should mention who's here and who's not. Commissioner Coombs is here. Actually, who's not here? Commissioner Nelson and Commissioner Carden are not here. And does that mean all of us are voting? It does. We've got 7 members. So we've got Commissioner Coombs, Commissioner Adams, Commissioner Richards, Commissioner Steele, Commissioner Baptista, and Commissioner Nidiger, and myself, Commissioner Armstrong, our president. And I should turn my microphone on. And hopefully I spoke loud enough that
You
that
probably have to hit the button underneath, it's gonna be red. So either your battery died or it turned itself off.
Battery dies this morning.
We
okay,
have more batteries if you.
okay. We'll share. Oh, is it on? Okay. Okay, so the next thing that we need to address is agenda approval and staff reports.
Mr. Chair, I would, before we go into that motion, I don't see, on our minutes, we have review and approve the minutes from July 23rd. I don't see the minutes in here in the packet. So
Sorry, we'll just have to strike that.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
So that's what I did.
Okay,
Mr.
so
Chair,
we're not gonna, yeah,
in our work meeting, I guess we didn't quite get to it. Item 3 is canceled as of just this afternoon.
okay. So item number 3 is gonna be canceled.
And
Just
definitely-
Cancel.
It was withdrawn by the applicant.
Okay. Okay, so with that being said, does anybody want to make a motion regarding agenda and staff reports?
So why don't we make it clear for the public that's here that which
Which one it
motion
is?
will not be
Got it.
dealt with.
Number 3 is the preliminary subdivision located at 298 North, 100 East in the Little Denmark subdivision. If anybody's here for that, you could just go,
It's nice to see you here tonight.
because they withdrew. So I don't cover that.
What does, can I ask, what does withdraw mean?
That it's not before us at all, and we don't know when it's gonna come back.
Yeah, they sent us an email saying that they have found that their proposal does not work. They will probably resubmit a new proposal, but that would require new noticing and public hearing.
Perfect.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve the agenda for the planning commission dated August 27th with the exception of number 3, which is withdrawn, and also number 5 to be reviewed at a future meeting.
Okay, so we have a motion, and do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve the staff reports.
Okay,
I'll
second.
second.
We have a motion and we have a motion from Commissioner Richards and a second from Commissioner Baptista, all in favor? Next, we should cover declaration of conflicts and abstentions from commission members. Do any of you have any conflicts with any of the items that are before us, or need to recuse yourself over anything? No? We're all good? Okay. Then we'll move on to the item number 1, Royce. Yeah, you have to turn that on. There we go.
Okay, so item number 1 is a request to waive the setback requirement on shed height. So let's see, so the request is a 20-foot tall shed with an approximately 3-foot setback, and I should say approximately 20-foot tall shed. So here is,
It isn't 20 feet, okay?
Oh.
That was the original plan that we sent in, but
okay,
we only need 16 or 17 feet. We don't need the 20. So the request was for 3 more feet
oh,
above the 15.
okay. So, well, if they approve up to 20, or they approve approximately 20, then that would,
Okay,
well, that's a good question.
when
I'm
we
sorry.
open it up, we'll have you go ahead and tell us
Okay, sorry.
where Royce is
Okay.
off.
Okay. So the plans I have, I guess, are the old plans, so I
Go ahead, Royce.
apologize. I didn't know things had changed. So, all right, so we have a shed that's currently existing here, and so it says about 3.5 feet from the property line. The applicant has actually done a survey on the property, had a survey done. The surveyor has shown that on this side, we're about 3.24 feet, and this side 3.69 feet. So the original application a couple of months ago, or last month, I believe, on this was for the same request, but when I went out and measured it, the fence here kind of jogs around a little bit because we have some trees on the other side and other aspects to the property that move the fence around. And I measured the fence being right here, being about 2.5 feet from the shed. So based on that, the commission decided that it was not compliant at that time because our minimum setback is 3 feet and chose to deny the application. So as I said, the applicant has since had a surveyor come out and look at it, and these are the measurements that he's come up with. So since the minimum is 3 feet, this structure currently complies with the code as it's not 15 feet tall yet. That being under the code that was applied under, 15 feet is kind of the threshold where the 3 foot minimum is. So if it was taller than that, then we get an increased height requirement. So here's originally what I saw. And then here's what the fence looks like. So the fence does not follow the property line, just to be clear. So I guess this isn't what's being done. I guess the applicants can speak to that. But these are the drawings that we had. So showing about a 20 foot and a half roof there. And as you can see, the ground comes up on this side. The way that we measure the height of a shed in this type of, or in any situation, is we go up to all 4 corners, up to the highest point, and then down to the ground. So wherever the ground level is. So here we'd measure from there up, and here we'd measure from here up. So, I mean, overall, it wouldn't be quite 20 if it was this design. So no matter how high it is, that's gonna factor into height. So, all right, I think that was the last. No, there we go. So the second, or the first floor is to be a workroom where.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Do you take the shortest amount or the largest amount?
So you just measure from
You
the
average
ground and average. Yeah. So it's the ground on all 4 corners and average. So the workroom shown here, this is existing. So just supposed to be an art studio, as the applicant has said. And then the next second level is to be a storage area. So depending on the height that would be permitted, the applicant intends on just storing materials on this level. So I think that was the last one. There we go. All right. There has been some concern in the past about possible occupancy of that second story or of the structure later on. The applicants expressed that they do not intend to occupy the structure, but it's possible later on in the future that the structure could be modified to be occupied by somebody, maybe not the property owner, somebody later, whoever. So as a result of that, planning staff recommends that we do not allow occupancy to be granted for the accessory building. So that would just run with the conditional use permit, which would go with the land in this case. So also we recommend that as it gets higher up, there's a graduated setback requirement. So once the building gets to 15 feet tall, or once it gets to 16 feet tall, it needs to be 4 feet back, 17 feet tall, 5 feet back from the property line, and so on. So for every foot above 15 feet, there's an increased foot of setback requirement. So planning staff would recommend that we approve the shed that no part of the accessory structure encroaches on the setback for the height of that portion of the accessory structure. So whether that be taking the whole addition and moving it in to meet the setback so that it's, I guess it's not cantilevered, whatever the opposite of that is. Or doing like a sloped roof or stair step pattern, whatever that would make it so that it meets the code. Yes.
Wouldn't that look really strange?
Yeah. I mean, depending on how it's done, I could see a potential if you the applicants expressed a desire to do like an angled roof, like a sloped roof. If you did a sloped roof in the right place, you could get it so that it meets the setback with the height requirements. Yeah. So that's a possibility. I'm not saying that has to be the way that it's done. I mean, yeah, you could do steps, which would look bizarre. But that's what we recommend so that it does meet code. However, it is the prerogative of the commission. If you choose to waive the setback requirement, you can allow it to just go straight up from where it is. That is permitted by code. So are there any questions on this item?
Anything, commissioners? Nope.
Okay.
Thank you, Royce. Now, if you'd like to stand up and present as the applicant. And just for the record, remember to give us your name and your address.
Diane Bjornson, and it's 1243 Hillside Drive
Okay.
in Pleasant Grove. We started, this all started in the spring, okay, when our family decided that they wanted to upgrade our yard. And the first thing that we thought of doing was working on this, remodeling this shed, okay? And let me see, I think we talked to Dave in March, okay? Is when we started on this, and we did send in plans for putting a second storage on it, a story for storage, and those are the plans that you saw there. We were under the impression at the time that the, is it 16 feet that you can go up?
15 feet before you start to have that.
3 feet.
Anyway, that you could go up, use that above your property line because the shed is in a, it's down in a depression, okay? It's on a hill, okay? And so we thought that we could go up, and so we applied for the 20 feet, and were denied that because we can't go up that far. So right now, legally, we can go up 15 feet. And since we are going to put, we have to close it off and whatever, we are going to put a second story of whatever we can get. If we can get just 5 feet of what the law is at the moment without a special thing from you, that's what we'll have to do. It is basically for storage. We have some accessory storage buildings also on our property, which we planned on taking down. As I say, our plans were to beautify our yard, but we haven't done anything, and our yard looks like trash, okay? But put new grass in, get all the sprinkler systems working, put in a big patio, blah, 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 blah. But we wanted to get this done first. So this summer, everything has just gone to pot, let's face it.
Royce, can you flip the slide back to the one with the picture with the height?
Now, we first applied for a building permit for 20 feet, but we, as I say, we can get 5 feet, okay? And we wanted at least 2 more feet so we could stand up in the storage area. Actually wanted a third. Our request was for 3 feet so we could put a little slant on the roof. But as I say, if we could get 2 feet, that would be wonderful. On the one side, there is enough space for us to legally do it. It is the back side that is the part in question. Now, when I know that you're very aware that we have a lot of people living in our house at this moment. And we talked about that the last time we came. This is not intended for use, and our property is not zoned for people living in extra whatever. Do you know what I mean? And my family will not be going out there at all.
Mrs. Bjornson,
Yeah,
does the shed currently have any plumbing in it?
it did have a hose, okay,
A hose, so there's.
a hose,
there's-
because it was a greenhouse, a hose.
Okay.
But that, do you know what I mean? There's no,
It's just on the outside.
yeah, so in other words, there's not, there's not plumbing in it, whatever. In other words, the intent is for a shop in the bottom and for storage in the top. And as I say, it is not for my family. In my, I would have to say this, okay, because I do have some neighbors of mine that have been concerned about me putting my family in this, because we do have a lot of people in our house, okay? And this seems to be concerned, but the main thing is it's not zoned to do that. If there was ever a disaster, okay, and the police department was trying to get people who lost their homes, okay, and a place to stay, I would certainly offer that to the police department for a family to sleep in it. Do you know what I mean? Other than that, no big deal. In other words, it's off limits.
Okay.
It's off limits, very definitely. But as I say, this project basically was to do storage, and it would be so much nicer if we could stand up in the top.
Okay.
But we have to want to get it covered, before winter. So we need to do that. Now, there was a comment also the last time I was here about enabling our children. And I would just like to say that we understand that concept very well. We have kicked out adult children out of our home before. My husband does have one of his degrees in counseling, and I have taken graduate studies in, the whole thing, okay?
We're good with that.
Okay, so anyway, I think that is basically, that's the beginning project, and we hope by next summer that we have our yard taken care of and in good shape to do it. But we just really would like to be able to stand up in that second floor. That's
Okay, so how is this diagram incorrect?
the roof on this one is slanted more than what we're requesting right now, and it's higher. That is 20. We are asking for 2 to 3 feet more.
So
So
you're saying
5.
on the front, then what you're asking for is 17 foot on the front, and because that's 2 feet more than the 15 feet.
Yeah. And a foot on the back. If we can't get a foot on the back, that's okay. We can put a flat roof on it. But it's just that bending over, do you know what I mean? To put storage away is just a, yeah. And it's hard. It's hard, and
Okay, but you understand what you're saying is you're saying that if you put 17 feet on the front, and you're saying, well, I want a couple of feet more than the 15-foot requirement, then.
It would be a straight roof.
Yeah, it'd be dead flat.
Yeah, and that's why we actually requested 3 feet if we can get it, so that we can have a 1 foot.
A shed roof that goes.
Yeah, so that the water and the snow.
18 feet on the front and 15 feet on the back is okay?
We want, we're asking for on the front 17 and 18 on the back.
Do you want it to come from higher in the back and lower in the front?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's the way that roof is slanted right now, okay? It's slanted toward the front, toward the middle of our property, okay?
Okay. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Mrs. Johnson?
So does that, with the 18 feet, does that, I know we talked about, we gotta go, when we're past 15 feet, we have to.
So 18 feet should be a 6 foot setback.
Well, it's, I mean, the distance, that, like, how wide is that?
Yeah,
It's
6 foot
15
5.
feet, 11 inches along the bottom, is that what it says? So if we're going
Right.
17 feet, 18 feet on the back, then that's, so with 3 feet, that's a 3 foot variance, is it, from what the code is on the back, okay? Too bad the sign doesn't go the other way.
I don't think I have any questions for that.
Anybody else have anything? Okay, well, we may ask you to come back and stand back up again, but for now, I think we're good.
Okay.
I'll open it up to public comments, if anybody from the public is here and would like to address us on this one. And understand, we're not, you know, this is a statute that we're trying, it's a statutory kind of thing. We're not, this isn't voting. We have to look and see if this fits our code, and we are, I mean, a permitted use is, I mean, this is a permitted use as long as as we approve the condition. So we have a hard time not approving the condition in some situations, but go ahead and stand up. Yeah.
Okay, my name is Paul Farber. Address is 1246 Hillside Drive. This is, thank you for the opportunity to express opinions on this matter and for the format. So you've mentioned that this is a statutory issue. How did you describe it?
It's administrative. We just interpret the statute, the code.
So I believe personally that we have codes for reasons, and some of the reasons have already been a matter of discussion. As has previously been indicated, this neighborhood is zoned as a single family dwelling area. And I would express that the difference in height that we're talking about actually does make this a habitable structure. So regardless of the intent of the current occupants, the possibility that at some point in the future it could be occupied, I think is reason enough to consider denying the application. I also want to question, there was some question about plumbing. My understanding was that there was in fact plumbing inside the building. So I'd like to question that as a matter of fact, because I believe that goes to the question of whether or not the structure will be occupiable.
Right. Well, I mean, if she gets the approval here, then it goes on and she gets a building permit, and the inspector, the building inspector, will go out and, you know, make sure that it meets whatever criteria we approve as far as this goes, or don't approve, or whatever. So So we'll check on that.
Mr. Chair, can I just ask you, which house is yours?
It's
Where do you live?
1246. So it's on the other side of the street and just a little bit to the east.
You're below.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So my primary interest in this isn't sight lines or field of view or anything like that. It really does go to the occupancy question, and primarily because the number of cars that are typically parked there, I think is excessive currently. And if we're adding occupancy to that lot, then the possibility of increasing that, I think, is a negative to the neighborhood.
Have you noticed any difference recently to parking situation up there?
Sure. So I have seen it varies widely throughout the day. The most that I've seen is something like 7 cars. And I have seen it with no cars there also.
Well, I'm saying, is it better or worse than it was 6 months ago?
I don't think I could speak to that.
Okay. Is there anything else that you'd like to address us with, or?
I only want to ask, make sure I got everything. Was there anything else that you wanted to bring up? Okay, that's all.
Commissioners, do you have any questions? Nope, okay, well, thank you. Is there anybody else here to speak on this one? Okay, well, we'll close the public session, bring it back up here. You guys think-
I have a question for staff. Sure. So on the previous application, there were letters from other neighbors. Are those relevant still, or are those not part of this application?
We received one letter on this one, so I assume that if people have the same concerns, that they would bring them forward, because we did notice it again as a new public hearing, as a new item.
They might not know that they need to bring it
So
forward.
since it is a new application, it would have to be just what was received for this application.
Okay.
I have a question. It being a new application and she says that this diagram is wrong, how do we know what she's asking for now?
Well, this diagram wasn't included in the application. This is just a diagram from our building department that was received. So this is not
So
something
what
that she
is it?
presented.
What is asked on the application? Does she ask for the different, or is it still the same application she applied for before?
When I received the application, my understanding was it was the same, but I guess it's not. So, my understanding was that there was some variability depending on how the roof slope ended up being, but I didn't realize it was quite 3 to 4 feet.
So I'm trying to figure out, what are we trying to approve here? Are we trying to approve that, or are we trying to?
Well,
approve
why
what
don't
she
we
said?
go ahead and we'll address that, and if a motion is made, what she said is she said 18 feet in the back and 17 feet in the front. Let's go ahead and make sure that that's included in any motion that we would make. If we're
So because
comfortable-
the noticing language is approximately 20 feet in height and approximately 3 feet from property line, there's room to work with there. So, you know, if it said exactly a certain height number, then.
Well, if she's good with 18 and 17, I
So
think
we
we
should
should
be,
put that in there.
so we should be making our decision on 17 and 18.
Yeah, that's what she's
That's what
asking.
she's asking, that's what she's asking for today. That's what I.
Yeah, and that's what I'm asking, is that what are we supposed to be?
You're able to do that. You can define what you want to.
I think it's, yeah, because she applied for approximately 20 and then tonight stated 17 and 18, I think that's what we go off.
Okay.
And the setback, just to confirm the setback.
Yeah, are we doing something about the setback?
Right.
And how does it affect the
On the
setbacks?
setback, or do we, in the motion, do we put 3-foot setback with additional 3 feet?
Yeah, so we said that it's approximately 3 feet, so you can make it more, you can't make it less, you can make it more than that.
But there's already a foundation there and a building there at that point. So I think really what we gotta do, when we can tell her, oh, you can, I mean, obviously she wouldn't be here if she's gonna pick the building up and move it over 3 more feet, then we would need all the code.
But you could say that you approve the addition of those setbacks.
Yeah, I don't think that makes sense.
Or in the current placement.
We're just leaving it
So,
the way it is and letting.
I think we're talking about, there's a few issues there, right? So one issue, the first issue is concern over whether this is gonna be occupied or not.
Yeah.
And
I
so,
think that's probably the greatest concern.
okay,
in the
and so what are our options tonight? We can grant this with the conditions related to occupancy, but we also have conditions related to height and setback. There's kind of two different conditions.
Well, she's asking for a variance from the height requirement.
Okay.
So that's the variance that's being asked for. We can mitigate neighbors' concerns by adding some conditions that would preclude it from being occupied. And we can do some of those things besides just saying, hey, you can't live in it. We can say, well, there can't be any plumbing in there. You can't insulate it, for example. I think we could say some things like that might make it so that the neighbors are not concerned about whether, heck, I've got a shop that has storage and there's no, there's bare studs. There's, it keeps things really dry. Right? So, I think we could address that, but the variance that's being asked for is a setback variance, a height and setback.
That's my point, is we really have two issues here. Do we grant the setback variance? And do we put conditions to protect against the occupancy, right?
I think
those are
so.
kind of the two issues that we're looking at.
I think so, and I think when she was here before, she's asking for a higher, you look at how much is sticking up over, if you go back, Royce, I'm sorry. Look at how much is sticking up over that fence right there. That's a 6-foot fence. And so the top of the fence is at 12 foot 5 inches, is that right? Mm-hmm. And so she's talking about taking that up to 18. So 3 feet away from that fence, you're looking at 6 feet. So we'll stick up 6 feet over the fence, which is a lot less than 20, but still, well, it's not a lot less, 2 feet less than 20. But the neighbors, I think, behind last time, although they didn't write us a letter this time, but they did, they were concerned about their view. I think they did. But who addressed view and who was concerned about density? And can we consider them? Or I think we can consider them.
We got a letter this time, right? You sent out there's a letter from the neighbor.
You have that. We should have it.
Yeah, you did. I think we got it. Oh, no, that's a different one.
We don't have it printed out.
I think I saw one.
Yeah.
I'd just like to make a point of clarification. The zoning code currently prohibits accessory structures in single-family residential zones. We are considering the possibility of accessory
apartments.
I'm sorry, accessory
Or second
apartments
structures.
or more than one residence on a lot. So I think it's a bit superfluous to try to mitigate that further. I mean, that would be a zoning code enforcement thing. It would be something that we would look at the building permit to make sure that they're not creating a bathroom or a kitchen. To go so far as to say they can't add plumbing, a storage or a craft room or a workshop can have a sink, so there are some who actually have toilets in there, so it's and to say they can't do any kind of insulation, I'm not sure if that's within our reasonable purview. So I think you can reiterate or emphasize the fact that this is being approved to not be additional residential.
They are currently within compliance right now because they don't have any accessory apartment and they have family that's living there, I believe in different structures outside of the thing. And it's okay. So we could be making a restriction based on trying to go ahead and maybe it's not, can't we say, look, this is designed to impact density instead of accessory, the type of accessory. I don't know. How do you do that?
So the way the code's written right now is you can't have two separate detached structures that both have a bathroom and a kitchen in them. And so if they put a bathroom and a kitchen in it, it's not compliant, and that would make it a dwelling. So
You can't have more than two or more than one.
you can't, sorry, you have more than two. You can't have two. That's what
You can't have two, you can have one.
You can have one, but
Which
not
is
two.
half.
Well, no, which is one
It's like the
accessory
one-
structure
One extra structure.
that has it, but you can't have two. With, like, you can't have
Detached.
that shed or that whatever with the kitchen and that one, but you could have just this one.
So there's a safeguard.
So it's already
code that would
addressed.
Take care of it.
Well, how many structures are we talking about? How many structures on your property exist?
We got a map. I think Roy's. Are these two little ones in the front sheds? Or to the side
There's-
over here by the. right
There's
above
two
the-
little sheds on the side. We're gonna get rid of one, hopefully, when we get this done. The main structure is one structure. I mean, it's not two,
Right. What about that little square?
that's part of the putting it together. It's part of the structure. It's my office, okay?
I don't have a pointer.
Yeah, it looks like you have 4 structures there.
Are you talking about this right here?
No, we're talking about this square right here. What,
Oh, that's my husband's tool shed. It's been there for years, okay? So that,
They're not.
so there is no,
So what's-
there is no current second building in the house.
so,
What
but,
about the one in the back? What's that?
but these right here, we're gonna get rid of this one right here. And, you know, we have to do more, that's fine, because we're gonna be getting some extra storage, we hope.
So there isn't any, that's in compliance then.
So, Mr. Chair.
And even with let me see, the house on the back does not have any windows that really, that come out this way. You won't be able to see that shed, that we're asking for the extra feet from the street. It's tucked back in there, hidden.
Mr. Chair, so I'm looking at the standards on a conditional use permit that we should look at on each case. So that's on page, that's the 4th page. So if you look at the standards, this is where I think this particular case gets a little tricky. So I'm on B standards, subsection 2. Where it says a proposed, see where I'm at? Good point. Seven.
Got it.
Okay. So number 2 says a proposed conditional use shall be detrimental. Okay, so above this, it says that we can't grant a conditional use permit if it's detrimental to the health, safety, or general welfare. And then the next one says it shall be detrimental if, subsection A, the use will cause unreasonable risks to the safety of persons or property because of vehicular traffic or parking, large gatherings of people, or other causes. So this is where it gets tricky, because that's what some of the neighbors are concerned about. But at the same time, we don't have any evidence that this structure will be occupied or is occupied. And so I don't know if we can apply that standard in this case, because although that might be a future concern or a concern for some of the neighbors, we don't have evidence that it's actually being occupied. Now, like Ken
Or that
said,
it's gonna increase the density.
Ken said that if it were occupied, that would be in violation of the code, and they could enforce it at that time afterwards anyways. And so I don't know if we can,
Yeah, I see that.
according to the standards, base our decision on that. It seems like that's the only concern that neighbors have brought. Nobody's brought an actual concern about the height.
They did before. Somebody did. But not today, in a previous
I know,
application,
but-
somebody did.
Yeah.
And it's shorter now than the previous
And then the
application.
picture we have here has several cars in front of the house.
already. So
Yeah, but that, again, that's one of those things, is this gonna increase the amount of people that are living on? See, if everybody that's living in the property currently is living according to, I mean, there's not a violation. How would this worsen the situation that's already there? We can't say that it would, I don't think.
We just don't have evidence of that. I mean, we have speculation or concerns that it could, and at that point, it can be enforced. If that's what they do.
Right, okay. Does anybody feel comfortable with trying to make a motion on this? See if we can get something together?
Well, do we want, I mean, like Ken said, it's kind of not necessary to put in any conditions on plumbing or installation because
You can't have two
people can't live there anyways, and so I guess
But
we can
legally, they can put
a sink.
one in there. They can put a kitchen in there.
If you put a kitchen in there, then you end up with a second kitchen ordinance that is gonna restrict that.
Okay.
I mean, you can't just put it basically makes it into a second dwelling if they don't have a bathroom out there.
Right. No, a second kitchen would not be permitted. I mean, within the home, there's ability to put a second kitchen within the main home, but not in the accessory structure.
So we don't need to limit that anyhow. It is already limited. Okay. So the only question we're dealing with is the height. And that's what a conditional use permit is for. And I think that it's not. Just trying to look at this on the map again.
Mr. Chair, I'm prepared to make a motion with you.
Yep.
I move the planning commission approve the request of Diane Bjarnson for a conditional use permit to allow approximately, I'm gonna say 17 feet. That's what was requested, 17 feet in the front and 18 feet in the rear. And I'd like to make it clear that that's exact and not approximate.
Okay.
So that we're clear on that. And grant the variance of the setback of 3 feet from the property line in the R120 single family residential zone, and adopting the exhibits, conditions, and findings of the staff report, with a recommendation that based on the concerns that have been presented, that at some point in the future, the city verifies that it's not being occupied by people.
Okay. That work? Okay, so we've got a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Adams and a second from Commissioner Richards. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That one passes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, the second item is a 2-lot preliminary subdivision. Let's see if I can get- there we go. At 338 West, 2600 North in the Manila neighborhood. This is a public hearing to consider the request of David Gibb for approval of a 2-lot preliminary subdivision of approximately 1.67 acres on a property located in approximately 338 west, 2600 north in the RR rural residential zone.
Okay, so how this came about is the applicant was filling in the garage, or not the garage, but the carport area attached to the home. So this was noticed by our building department in July of 2015. And so it's required by the conditional use permit the applicant holds to operate the assisted living in the home there on 338 West, that they have a carport in conjunction, a carport or a garage in conjunction with the home. So because the carport was being removed, a carport had to be added, or a garage had to be added. The applicant has intended to add a carport up here, which it's kind of hard to see the property line, but it goes like right there. So anyway, so the property line needed to be moved to the east because we have a requirement of a 13-foot access. If you're gonna, a 13-foot paved access that goes back to an accessory building for a garage. So since the garage would be located in the rear yard, we had to move that property line over to make room for that access and to allow this to meet setback. So because the applicant's properties are part of a existing subdivision plat, the Manila Hills Subdivision Plat A, and he's requesting to vacate these two parcels from that subdivision and to create a new subdivision, Manila Hills Subdivision Plat B, which would just include these two parcels with the adjusted property line, with the intent of building the carport and completing the addition so that you can continue to maintain the conditional use permit for his business. So there, let's see, I guess I'll pull the plat up. So it's in the RR zone, so everything needs to be a half an acre. So all of the lot widths, frontages, acreage, and access widths, and also the proposed building areas do not encroach on any utility easements, which originally the carport was proposed to be a little bit to the east here. There's an existing sewer easement, and so the carport has been moved to the west by the engineer putting the plat together. So let's see, I'm trying to remember. There has been some concern about dwellings on properties. So we received a letter that the applicant was living here. This is also a dwelling, as it has all of the requirements for a dwelling, and it has been used as such in the past. So we don't have recommendations about what should be done there, as this is a subdivision plat and not a conditional use permit or anything like that. And again, as we talked about in the last item, there are a lot of fail safes in our code to make sure that we don't have multiple dwellings on the same property. However, based on the fact that this does meet code, and we have reviewed it to make sure that it does, staff recommends approval of this preliminary plat. So are there any questions?
It's all one ownership.
Yeah, the same property owner for both properties.
Shifting his own property line, but those two lots are owned by the same person.
Mr. Chair, so Royce, so this one and this one are on the same lot.
Right, and well, there has been some question as to which one is a dwelling and which one isn't, and so on. But like I said, it's something that's been brought up in letters that you have, or the letter that you have that we printed off. So I guess I wanted to address it, but not go super into detail on it because that's more of an enforcement
If you
issue.
knew though that there were people living in both of those, or they were both dwellings, then that would be in violation of the code, correct?
Right, and I guess the key thing being there, if we knew.
If we knew, so
Right.
Yeah,
So right now it's just speculation, I guess maybe strong speculation on the part of maybe our building department and some of the people that have lived in the area that have been concerned about it. But again, it's something that is still speculation. I don't have proof on that one way or the other. So, but again, it's more of an enforcement issue than an approval, I guess. But it would affect the approval actually.
But if we're being asked to decide whether we are going to approve this subdivision and
Right.
we knew that there were two dwellings, that would be in violation, and it would be difficult. So I guess it comes
You're
down to
correct.
evidentiary issue on.
Yeah,
And
and
do
then,
we really know?
right,
Well, maybe we'll see what the public has to say on this. I just wanted to clarify that though.
yeah, I mean, the commission can request that the applicant provide proof on that, because the burden of proof in any application like this is on the applicant to say, I do meet code and here's why you should approve my items.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Royce. Is the applicant here, present? Want to address the commission? Give us your name and your address.
My name is David Gibb. I own lots 3 and 4 of this subdivision at 338 and 328 West, 2600 North in Pleasant Grove. This subdivision was approved several years ago when we applied for a conditional use permit for an assisted living in our home. And one of the conditions of that conditional use permit was that we construct a carport, since we had closed in the garage and was using it already. And so we did that. And what we want to do now is expand that business with 2 more rooms and a bathroom and construct a carport to the rear, which means if we have a driveway that goes around, we had to move the property line over 5 feet. And to keep the square footage requirement of a half acre, we cut the corner off the top and put it on the side, on the east side of the property, so we could have a 13-foot driveway around the house to the carport. Simple.
Okay. Mr. Chair, question for the applicant. Okay. Mr. Gibb, is anybody occupying or living in that structure there?
When we turned our home into an assisted living facility, our plan was to build a home on lot 4.
Up here?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay, but my question is.
I know I'm getting to that.
I'm sorry.
And we decided at that time, since I wanted an office in the barn for another business, that we would finish the loft of the barn into an office. So we put a bathroom, a kitchenette, and a space for a bed up in that loft. And that's where my wife and I are sleeping. Yes, we don't live there, but we do sleep there. We take a shower there. And occasionally we'll have a snack there, but we eat in our home and we're there in our business in the daytime.
Okay.
The next question is the cabin in the back. Another condition of the original subdivision was that cabin, we call it a guest home, our daughter is living there, that cabin be connected to the sewer. So we connected that to the sewer. We also added sidewalk and gutter all along the frontage, which was a very expensive proposition. We also had to put the irrigation ditch running through the property. We had to cover that. Yes, we did that. We've spent a lot of money on this, and we still hope to be able to build a home in the back.
Where do you, but you said that you stay here sometimes. Where do you live? Here?
Well, I just explained, we sleep in the loft, we shower there,
Uh-huh.
but we live in the home. We run the business.
Okay.
If you were to come out and visit us, you'd have to come into the house to find us,
Okay.
unless it was 9 or 10 o'clock at night.
Do we have any other questions for the applicant? Well, thank you. We may ask you back up if we have another question or something.
Royce,
No, go ahead.
Royce, if he were to build a lot up there, up in here, build a house up in here, then he would, obviously, if you build a house up here, there would be no reason for him to want to live there.
But yeah, if you built a house on there, from what he was saying, it sounds like then you'd have 3 dwellings on lot 4. So if you was to build a house up there, we'd make sure that the other 2 buildings were not habitable, habitable. They wouldn't have a kitchen or a bathroom or whatever make them a dwelling.
So you'd have to, if you built a house up there, and if you eliminate this as a living space, you would have to get rid of this too.
Yes.
Yes.
Right.
Well, it's my opinion that it's currently out of compliance, that based on the testimony of the applicant, we have 2 residences currently on lot 4. Whether he says he's living in it or not, the fact that there is a bed, there's a kitchen, and there is a bathroom, and he only sleeps and showers there, I'm sorry, that's living. That is a home, that is a
No,
residence.
this one is 1.15 acres just for this part of the lot. Does our code, I mean, if it's in the rural residential, can you have an accessory? Like a guest house or anything like that?
Not currently. We may possibly get there.
Okay.
But here's the thing. If this is a cabin where his daughter lives, and this is where they're sleeping and eating, whatever, showering, there are currently 2 dwellings on that property, which is not compliant with code.
Okay.
So I would recommend that if you want to approve it this way, it's going to have to show one of these structures being removed.
Removed or?
Removed or brought
I mean,
into compliance as a non-residential dwelling. In other words, not having any bathroom, kitchen facilities.
Why would the original conditional use permit, which I'm presuming that this was here and had, it didn't have the facility.
The barn, it was later enclosed, and
Okay.
it sounds like it's been turned into a residence.
Okay. Okay.
Chair, I have a question, but should we open it public before we?
Yeah, we should. Let's go ahead. We had some questions for staff. Let's open this back up to the public. Anybody here that would like to address this one? Nope. Okay, we'll close that and then bring it back up here. Yeah.
Okay,
Commissioner
so
Bautista?
regardless of whether it's in compliance or not, are we, if we approve this, there's no roadway, if this ever got subdivided, are we making a flag lot?
No, it has frontage on the street. It's an odd shaped lot, but it does have frontage.
Okay.
But they would have
But
a real hard
could
time.
they, could
Yeah,
they,
206 feet there.
Further subdivided is what you're asking?
yeah, I mean, I just want to make sure that we, if we approve something like that, we're addressing access to the back lot.
Well, there isn't a back lot. There's
Well,
only 2 lots here.
right.
So
She's
if
talking
your
about.
question is, could you take this and make it into
Yes.
2 lots? There isn't a way within the ordinance without extending a street up. So you need 110 feet of lot width. You need, 60 feet of frontage in the RR zone. And so things would have to change radically here in order to make that 1.15.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we're not.
Right now, it's just, it is a very unusually shaped lot,
Okay.
but it meets all the requirements.
I think that's what I think the answer probably your question is, yes, it can, but if there is current configuration.
No, I
probably
understand.
can't.
Yeah, I just didn't know,
Am I right to say that, Dave?
I just know in general, planning and stuff, we always get the, access, instruction on what, so I just want to know in the future, if there's a future
Correct.
way
We
of
look at
causing a
things
problem.
generally
Could it
how-
cause a problem in the future, right?
That's usually in respect to the neighborhood, the vicinity.
Okay.
So when an applicant comes in and says, well, I want to do this, and they're not making it possible for a neighbor to extend the development, that's an issue we want to be concerned about. The fact that a property owner has a large piece of property, in this case, an interesting shaped piece of property, and wants to use it in such a way that may preclude further development of their property, well, that's their choice. They can use their property however they like.
Mr. Chair, I'd also like to address the letter. I think it covers some of those same things that have been discussed here as far as living in the barn, which we've already discussed in here. I just want to make a point. I've never seen a traffic problem in front of that house, and I drive by it every day. I don't agree with I sometimes drive past it 3 or 4 times a day. you know, and I've never seen a traffic problem in front of the house. And so I just wanted to kind
It's not relevant.
I would say it's not relevant, you know, as far as our discussion there.
Mr. Chair, I had a question. Staff, with the other one being up, not, the other decision we had made to deny for non-compliance, does this fit into the same rule if it's not a structure?
It is a structure.
What do you mean if it's not a structure?
Well, we're,
Considering the subdivision not a principal structure.
right, that's what I'm saying, we're not approving a structure at this time, right? We're just,
No, we're approving a preliminary plat, but the
Right.
plat itself has to be compliant with code.
right, so it doesn't fall under the same as a structure not being in code, where we can't pass it based on the fact that we can't, expand the non-compliance.
It's not an expansion of non-compliance, because I guess when this was originally approved, that was just an accessory building. There wasn't a residence in it, but now there is a residence in it, so it's a different question now. So it's not a non-compliant situation where we're expanding a non-conforming, because it's conforming, or it was conforming when it was approved, and now it's not conforming.
Yeah, so can we make any changes to it until it's in
Compliant
compliance?
again, no.
Well, you couldn't approve it the way it is, because there's two dwellings on it, so it's not.
I think in regards to the plat itself, as far as the lot boundaries and all the easement, all that stuff, the plat, we're recommending that it be approved in regards to that. Where we have a problem as staff is that there are two dwellings on lot 4, and that one of them should be shown as either removed or altered as to not being a dwelling in a dwelling status.
Okay, I think that's, Mr. Richards has a question for the applicant. Mr. Gibbs.
So Mr. Gibb, how would you resolve that non-compliance situation?
Well, either one of those buildings cannot be a residence. There's no rear yard on the barn. Well, there's a right of way there, and the cabin.
Is that cabin like a one-bedroom?
Well, we kept it because it was the original pioneer home on the property, and when my son came back from his mission, he said, "Let's fix it up. We can live there." So several of our kids have lived there until the baby is born, and then they move on. And right now, our youngest daughter, who was just divorced and went through rehab, came home, is divorced, and she's getting married soon, and she'll be moving on too. And that cabin will become a garden shed, but it does have a bathroom. It does have a kitchen.
Could that cabin be a place of residence for you until you build your house?
Yeah, my wife and I could sleep there too.
When is your daughter planned?
Pardon me?
When is your daughter getting married?
She hasn't set a date.
See, I think the point is that one of these properties is going to need the kitchen removed in order for us to be able to, because that'll bring us into compliance again, and then we can go ahead and approve your plat, and I think that'd be fine. But as long as you've got two kitchens, then you've got two residences, and if you've got two residences.
Okay, how do you define a kitchen?
Probably a stove, oven,
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we should take a step back and define what, are we talking about a dwelling, or living? How's that defined?
You've got a finished room, that doesn't necessarily.
Is it the actual act of somebody living in it, or the structure itself having?
We reviewed this
living
code.
If
conditions?
the code says if it has a bathroom and a kitchen, then it's a dwelling.
Then it's
Yeah.
considered a dwelling.
Yeah, we reviewed this code and that's what it said. It doesn't have to have a bedroom, but it has to have a bathroom and a kitchen, right? So you can take the bathroom or the kitchen out of either one of those, and all of a sudden you're in compliance again, and then we can approve the plat. But until you do that, you've got two dwellings according to our code.
Mhm. I'm willing to do that. I would just like a clear definition of what a kitchen is.
Well, I don't know that we necessarily have one.
But you're requiring
If it's a
me,
place to, I understand what you're saying, but does the code delineate what a kitchen specifically is? But it says if it's a place to.
I think we have that in building code, and so I wouldn't be able to cite that to you at this moment, but there is definition in building code as to what a kitchen is.
Okay, can we approve the plat contingent upon one of these being brought into compliance with? Okay, well, I think that's what we end up doing.
Do we need a deadline though?
Well, this is the thing, this is a preliminary plat, so
Oh,
he will
so-
need to get final plat approval of city council. I think at that time, we're gonna have to show evidence of compliance.
I think that's the way you solve it.
So do we give him the definition of a kitchen in the meantime before that then?
I just make it conditional upon it becoming compliant. So
Yeah,
whatever
that's-
it takes to
that's
make
what
it
we do.
compliant.
So Mr. Kidd can come down to the city tomorrow and get that definition. And what the code is.
Sit down with Dave and
Yeah.
figure it out.
And just figure it out, what it takes, and then obviously once he's,
Compliant, then it can go to the.
Ken, would a building inspector check that before it went before, city council for approval,
Well,
final approval?
with this, we will make sure that we'll find compliance and that will get the building inspector involved.
So that could be
But,
a delay, until that happens, obviously.
I think you just, in our approval, we say that prior to, this is contingent upon the existing properties being in compliance, prior to going to the city council for final plat approval, right? So we gotta put that in there. So, anybody feel comfortable, strong enough to feel like they could make a motion?
Maybe.
Thank you, Mr. Young.
You already got your head,
I'll second that. Well, correct me if I'm wrong. Mr. Chair? I move the planning commission approve the request of David Gibb for a 2-lot preliminary subdivision plat on property at 338 West, 2600 North in the RR Rural Residential Zone.
Do we need to include both addresses?
Well, when we talk about a subdivision, we usually just put an approximate address on there.
Okay, keep going. Press forward.
Contingent upon the applicant bringing lot 4 into compliance. There's been a finding that he is currently out of compliance, and so before it goes to city council or to the next phase, it would need to come into compliance.
Okay, so we've got a motion from Commissioner Adams. Do we have a second? Second. A second from Commissioner Nidiger. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. So, moving on. This is the last one. This is. Which is, we have to approve that.
I know, I just, I don't know if that is a special circumstance.
Okay, the next one, public hearing for a text amendment that would apply citywide. Public hearing to consider the request of Ryan Clark for approval of a proposed city code amendment to change the definition for corner lot front lines in the lot line front definition in section 10-6-2 in the definitions chapter of the planning and zoning title of Pleasant Grove City Code.
Okay. So, let's see. So the request here is that there's a definition in our code which says that on a corner lot that the narrowest frontage is defined as the front. So that's caused some issues usually with lot width and making sure that we meet code on that with new developments. So
My lot's out of compliance.
that's it. Okay.
I bought the house.
So you need to recuse yourself.
Well, I have a triangle shaped weird lot, but it would, frontage is wider than my side. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, we did some research, and this is what we proposed. That basically remove the side bordering on the street, which has the smallest dimension, shall be the front line, and change that to Either frontage may be the front line, provided a buildable lot is created in connection with required setbacks for the zone in which the lot is located. So the reasoning behind that is that theoretically, somebody under this code, we don't have a lot depth requirement, nor do we have a depth requirement for how homes should be built. So somebody could come in and let's say that the minimum building pad for the zone is 1,000 square feet. They could build a 10-foot wide by 100-foot long building pad and then build a house like that. If they want to do that, though, I mean, more power to them, I guess. But yeah, and I guess it could happen. But I mean, that's not something that we as a city want to say, yes, you have to build your house exactly this way. So in discussion, though, we've determined that if somebody wants to create an unbuildable lot, then well, I don't know why somebody would do that, basically. And if somebody decides to do that, then I don't know. That's a potential that could come out of this code because, like I said, we don't have a depth requirement. So it could be that somebody would create an extremely long lot that is so narrow that it's not buildable. But
what if they came to us and asked for a variance, though, at that point?
Right.
Do we have to give them a variance?
Yeah.
Because so they want to come and they say, oh, look, our lot is unbuildable unless you give us a variance. And are we? Yeah, well, if it's a self-imposed hardship, if they made the lot that way. What if they bought it though? Yeah, I guess we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Well, but I guess. Yeah. So we wanted to bring that up though. So because that is a concern that's been expressed by all of staff, basically that there is a potential that this code change could create unbuildable lots. However, again, I feel like there are some things in the code which are fail-safes for that. There's the minimum buildable area, which means that somebody couldn't just lock the setbacks and literally create an unbuildable lot. But if somebody chose to, they could create a very strange configuration and still build something that is
Which
a little
is
smaller.
actually permissible on any lot, not just a corner lot currently. So I don't know if we really need to be that concerned with.
Yeah, I mean, I can clarify a little bit. My lot is triangular shaped, and so the way the city defines it is I have to meet the frontage setbacks on both streets.
Right.
So that's the way the city defined it, and the buildable envelope on my lot works because of the weird triangle that I'm on for me to face the way that actually wouldn't be compliant based on that, but I think that's the only choice. On my, according to this code, I don't meet that code. I don't meet that. And I know my subdivision is newer than the code is, but I think it's the only way they could do it, and I'm on a half acre, and so it works, but anyhow. Sorry to interrupt. So, and to address that too, so in my research, I'll get to this, but basically we don't have a requirement that says that your front door has to face one way or the other. We just say that when we're measuring lot width and when we're measuring the setbacks, that the front lot line is determined by the narrowest frontage. So basically somebody can arrange their house however they would like, but it's more of a lot width thing. So an example of where this has created some hardship is there's a recent subdivision that came in for approval in July, the Honeysuckle subdivision. And they came in for a variance and were denied because they didn't meet the lot width. So basically on our corner lots, we have a requirement that they're 10 feet wider in most zones than the regular lot width. So because of that, it makes it so the lots have to be wider generally, and sometimes they're very long, narrow lots, which makes it very challenging to subdivide. So what this code has actually done in that case is made it so that lot is unsubdividable. But if this code was changed, the lot could be subdivided. So that's kind of the difference between what we have now and what we're proposing. So in research that I did, before I get to that, this is what the applicant on their property is shown. So we have a street here, and the home being set back here. So again, what this will do is it'll basically reorient setbacks a little bit, because currently this would be the front. And so we have a 25-foot setback here. which would push the home down this way. And it's not that it necessarily makes it unbuildable per se, but the applicant has basically said that this is not what I want to do, and what's the point of this code? And since we've seen issues with it in other situations that are much more dire than this particular instance, we see a good reason for changing the code. So cities in the area, we're really the only one, Provo and North, up to Salt Lake County, that has anything that defines what a corner lot is in terms of where you front. So I feel like we're the odd man out. And basically, when I was talking with other planners and things, they seemed kind of surprised, like, well, why would you do that? You know? I like this slide. It's very obvious.
I would encourage us when we're dealing with stuff like this to, I like that one.
Yeah, so,
I like the fact that we're on man out.
so, and not that that's why we changed code, and it's not a popularity contest, but anyway, so that's kind of what I've found in research, though. It doesn't seem like it's a standard thing for cities to define where your front lot line has to be in your corner lots. So I think that's it. Yeah. So are there any questions on this code change?
Okay.
Okay.
Any questions for Royce? Sorry, I was whispering.
Whisper away.
We are a peculiar people, so anyhow.
Unique.
Yeah, we're.
Wait, are we talking about
Is
this
the
body or the
applicant
city in
present?
general?
My name's Ryan Clark, and I think the address is 3345. Help me out. 750.
Is that where you live now?
No, there's no building there
Where
yet.
do you live now?
Oh, sorry, current address. We just moved. 632 East, 110 South in American Fork.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
I think it
There you go.
He driving to work and back.
I work at home. I don't know where it is. Yeah, I can't leave. Well, I mean, our story is that we originally designed a house to fit into what we thought were the setbacks, which were 15 feet on one side and 25 on the bottom. And I'm not sure where we got that bad information. But we designed the house to fit so that the front yard was where the code says it should be. And later we discovered that we had to have 30 feet all around, and the house we designed wouldn't fit. So the next best thing was to move it up. But part of what we wanted in this half-acre lot was to enjoy the land on the lot. And if we have to follow the current code, it means we have to put the house right in the middle. So we'd have massive side yards and a small backyard, and then the house would occupy the whole thing.
Where I live.
Right, I was waiting for that. Right, so we don't want to do that.
I don't think he's gonna be interfering.
Just move the house.
I'll tell you what, it gets real tricky if you want to build a shed. Or accessory structure.
Yeah. So yeah, to preserve the land, we wanted to move the house up to the top, and that's when I contacted Royce and Deegan. They said that, well, you can't do that because you have to have the front on the small side. And anyway, here we are. So we just want to move the house. Interesting, also some other research. I found that the address for our lot is 3345. I'm not sure which direction, and 750. So it's actually the original intent of the plat was to have the orientation of the home the way that we're proposing.
Okay. So. Well, we appreciate that. And do we have any other questions for the applicant? Nope. Okay. Thank you. Let's open this up for public comment. Is anybody here that would like to speak to this from the public? Nope. We'll close that back up, bring it back up here.
I don't want to take the odd man out.
Yeah, I don't want to be a weirdo. Anybody want to go ahead and make a motion?
And you don't want to do
it?
Mrs. Chair,
It's a recommendation
what's your recommendation?
That we're making
making
a
a
recommendation
to
recommendation.
the city council.
Not a motion.
It says recommend.
Okay, sorry. Just
But
wanted
I
to
didn't
clarify.
say that.
I move the planning commission recommend that the city council approve the proposed text amendment to modify the front line definition for corner lots in section 10-6-2 of the definition chapters of the Pleasant Grove City Code And Director, read the rest of that? And adopting the exhibits, conditions, and findings of the staff report.
We have
I'll
a
second.
recommendation from Commissioner Coons and a second from Commissioner Baptiste. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Goes on to the planning commission.
Yeah, so this will go forward to the city council. for
Yes, the
final
council.
approval.
Mr. Chair, can
Chair,
I'll second.
Okay, we've got a motion for adjournment from Commissioner Richards and a second from Commissioner Baptiste. All in favor?
I tried to go first.